For the first time in history, the World Health Organization has decided to classify excessive video game playing as signs of a mental disorder in 2018. It's going to be called a gaming disorder. It's not the most creative name, but it's a start. Anyone who has suffered from gaming addiction knows it's a serious issue to be concerned about. But should countries go as far as to ban games with addictive tendencies? This is part 2 of our first video, 5 games so addicting they were banned across the world. So let's check out some titles that were banned for being both addictive and not well received by certain countries. Before we begin, subscribe to TheGamer and ring that bell to become part of our notification squad so you never miss a video. Without further ado, here are 6 more games so addicting they were banned across the world. Call of Duty Black Ops. Call of Duty Black Ops had to be successful. It was written in the stars that anything Treyarch touches becomes instant gold. It doesn't matter if the game is basically the same with a few minor adjustments like having different stories, weapon choices, and abilities. We're still gonna flock to the store and buy a copy, and it was no different when Black Ops was released. In just 24 hours, the game sold more than 5.6 million copies and smashed Modern Warfare 2's record by 2.3 million copies. It also exceeded over $1 billion in sales after just 6 weeks. Black Ops was on the path to being highly successful, but it also promoted another type of addiction from just the gaming variety. In the game, there was a category called Wager Match, where 6 players could wager their Call of Duty points against other players in the lobby. Players in the top 3 ranks received the winnings. It was promoting gambling without using real money to do so, which can become a quick addiction if you're consistently in the money. So why was Call of Duty Black Ops banned in 4 countries? Well, Germany banned the game initially and asked for a new copy to be made, which removed the swastikas seen as unconstitutional symbols in the country. The song Sympathy for the Devil was also removed, and no explosions, which led to limb loss, were allowed in the censored version of the game. Cuba banned the game for the controversial mission where you attempt to assassinate Fidel Castro, only to end up killing a double, and Japan removed it for excessive violence. Black Ops 2 was banned by the Pakistan government because it portrayed their people negatively. So, the game was banned for everything from promoting gambling to showing swastika symbols, but it's still one of the best Call of Duty games to date. Counter-Strike. Anyone who's ever picked up Counter-Strike understands how addicting it can be. For one teen, his addiction went a little too far. He was checked into a rehabilitation center by his parents for his video game addiction to Counter-Strike and brought to the middle of the desert in Utah. The boy had a strict routine where he would game until 1 a.m. and then sleep until noon, where he played 60 hours of Counter-Strike Global Offensive, putting in about 12 hours a day. He was brought to the center to monitor his brain activity away from the game, and while he was in the rehabilitation center, the emphasis was put on discipline and hard work instead of video games. By the end of the treatment, the results were positive. It was a reminder that the key to anything unhealthy is remembering moderation. Sometimes this involves your mom dragging you across the country in the middle of the night to a rehab center in the desert. Counter-Strike can be highly addictive as a multiplayer first-person shooter, where teams of terrorists battle to perpetrate an act of terror, and the counter-terrorists prevent it. Originally, the game was a modification for Half-Life before Valve gained the rights. There have been a number of spin-offs from the game, and most of them have been extremely successful and enjoyable. But there's one country in particular who could do without the Counter-Strike series. In 2008, Brazil chose to prohibit the sale of Counter-Strike, arguing against it being extremely violent and urging parents to make sure children didn't play the game for its addictive nature. This move was, of course, a brilliant one by the government as a way to regulate video game content. But it was also interesting since Brazil chose to ignore games which were more violent than Counter-Strike. The title happened to be extremely popular in the country at the time, and the decision was met with anger by the Brazilian gaming community. It only took 1 year for the ban to be lifted, which kind of proves the government should never poke the bear. Just let gamers have their video game addiction in peace. Mass Effect 3. One insanely clever film student by the name of Andrew Allen put together a hilarious but very real video to show what kinds of consequences gaming addiction can have on a relationship. In the video, they explore what happens when one person has a Mass Effect addiction and how it can put pressure on a marriage. In all of the hilarity this video shows, it also talks about some pretty real things, like the fact that the game is 80+ hours, and if you have zero lack of self-control, you may forget how to distinguish reality from the game. Admitting to an addiction you've had since the original Mass Effect came out in 2007 is no easy feat. It basically means you've had an addiction for over 10 years if you're still playing Mass Effect 3. If addiction isn't the only reason countries have decided to ban the Mass Effect series, why else would they want to? It turns out Singapore isn't really fond of homosexual relationships in the game. The ban came after it was realized that there was a love scene between a female human, if the players decided to be a woman, And the alien woman, although we're still not really sure how to classify the gender of this alien in question. She looks female, but the Asari only have one gender. Yeah, they're still pretty hot though. Well, addicted gamers of the series went into an uproar because it was the only country to ban the title. It turns out the Singapore government quickly changed their minds and allowed it to be released anyways. Again, never stand between Mass Effect and the fans. As Mel Gibson said in Braveheart, "They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom or our video games." Grand Theft Auto. Tom Bissell, a famous author and journalist, admitted to his GTA addiction in a pretty in-depth interview. The writer used to say days which he had only written 1,000 words were once his most unproductive days. But then he went 3 entire years without writing a single word. But there were 6 years where he had done nothing but write amazing things. So was it really a problem if he required a much-needed break? Here's what he had to say. "The first video game I can recall having to force myself to stop playing was Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Video games and cocaine feed on my impulsiveness, reinforce my love of solitude, and make me feel good and bad in equal measure." He continued on to talk about how he felt a deep connection to Nico from the GTA series, even after he had not touched the game in months. "Nico was not my friend, but I felt for him deeply. He was falling into habits and ways of being that did not reflect his best self. By the end of his long journey, Nico and I had been through a lot together." So while Bissell talks about his addiction to both drugs and video games, he admits he learned things from it as well, and created new lasting memories from the experience, never regretting for a moment his brief stint with addiction. Although GTA can easily become an addiction, it can also make people blur lines between what is real and what is fiction. This was the case for one teenager in Thailand. The game was banned after a copycat killing occurred. An 18-year-old student was charged with robbery and possession of a weapon, and would face the death penalty or life imprisonment if he was convicted of the crime. Police discovered a taxi driver killed in his cab. The teen had originally planned on robbing the cab after he couldn't afford to buy Grand Theft Auto, but things escalated quickly and the cab driver was killed. Grand Theft Auto was immediately pulled from the shelves, and all legal vendors were to withdraw the game from their stores or face large fees. The game had become so addicting to this teen, he had blurred the lines of reality and entertainment, and it meant no one else in Thailand would get to play the Grand Theft Auto series. For shame. The entire Pokemon series. Is there anything on the planet more addictive than Pokemon? We would like to proudly say no, but you might disagree with us. Actually, in all honesty, for many of us, Pokemon on the Game Boy may have been our first taste of video game addiction. What could have been more fun than escaping homework and schoolyard bullies to find yourself collecting amazing monsters and battling them for upgrades and new abilities? Nothing. That's amazing. So why was the entire Pokemon series banned from countries if it wasn't because of its highly addictive content for children? It turns out 3 countries banned the entire series, not to save the children from addiction, but for religious purposes. You cannot play Pokemon in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, or Qatar when the highest religious authority is Saudi Arabia. The Grand Mufti issued a fatwa to ban the entire Pokemon franchise. A fatwa is a legal option issued by a qualified Muslim scholar under a royal decree. You're learning with TheGamer today. The ban was due to the fact that Pokemon promotes Zionism and other religions, as well as encouraging players to participate in other social evils like gambling. Despite the ban, it still seems to be normally sold in Saudi Arabia, since it took place long after the first copy of Pokemon would have been on the market. So have no fear, it seems the country's ban just couldn't catch them all this time. See what we did there? It's the slogan. Fortnite. We noticed a lot of the comments on our last video, 5 games so addicting they were banned across the world, saying they wanted to see an entry for Fortnite. We're sad to say Fortnite isn't technically banned, but we won't disagree with you that it might be in the future. If you're not aware of the ensuing battle between Fortnite and PlayerUnknown Battleground, we should get you up to speed. Fortnite announced its Battle Royale mode, and all hell broke loose between the game developers of Fortnite and PUBG. PUBG had reason for concern since it almost replicated their own game to a T, and it has some gamers crying foul play while others are praising Fortnite for what it is. The mode is great. It's a faster-paced and simplified version of PUBG. It also beat PUBG to early access for consoles. But should PUBG be saying the mode needs to be banned? It's completely up to the player at this point. The game does rip off of PUBG, but it isn't an exact replica, and Battle Royale-style gameplay has been popping up all over video games since the success of PUBG. As much as PUBG wants to lay claim to an entire genre, it's probably not going to happen. But we can see the frustration with Fortnite, which basically ripped them off. What do you guys think? Would you ban Fortnite for copyright infringement? Who are we kidding? Of course you won't. Tons of quality titles have been banned. What do you guys think of this? Should a game be banned for any reason? If so, what reasons would you ban a game for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to The Gamer to stay up to date with all things gaming. Thanks for watching.